Welcome to the first edition of the Fishers Freight Coaches Corner. I am Andrew Smith, joined by the head coach of the Fishers Freight, Dixie Wooten, on our weekly show where we'll take a look back at last week's game and look ahead as well to upcoming games and take a weekly look at how the Fishers Freight are doing. Right now, they are 1-1, defeated the Quad City Steamwhalers 45-27 in the season opening game for the Indoor Football League a couple of weeks ago. And then last week went up to Green Bay, had a slow start, and came back, had a chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter, but ultimately fell by a count of 51-42. It's a bye week for the Freight this week, and then they'll be back at the Fishers Event Center on Easter Sunday, April 5th, to take on the Arizona Rattlers, the first time we will have seen the Rattlers in the 2-year history of the Freight. And Coach Dixie Wooten, thanks for joining us, and it's good to have you on and good to begin a new tradition here at the Fishers Freight of having an opportunity to take a look at upcoming games and also a look at how things are going. The league handed you a pretty challenging first two games. You got to play the two teams that were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, the top two teams, and got a chance to test yourself really early. Came away 1-1 and gave yourself a chance to win on Saturday, a chance to go 2-0. But what do you like about what you've seen out of your team so far through 2 weeks?
The first game against Quad City, we came out on fire. We got stopped once. Our defense came in the second half and played a pretty good game. So overall, that first game, we came to play. We made a lot of great plays in front of our home crowd. The second game against Green Bay, both teams are a pretty tough team. We went to Green Bay in front of a great crowd, and they're a well-coached team, and they came out to play. We started a little slow. Of course, we had a few turnovers. A couple of penalties that put us behind the eight ball, and they took advantage of it.
Well, now you've got an early bye week after a couple of weeks. How nice is this for an opportunity for you as coaches and also the players to just get some time off after training camp, after a couple of weeks, and get a chance to reset and hit the ground running for a run of 7 consecutive games here coming up starting on Easter Sunday?
I think the bye week came at a great time. When you play against a great team like Quad City, and then you play against a great team like Green Bay, you kind of know where you stand when it comes to your scheme, your players, and things like that. So I think we stand at a pretty good place. We just got to go back to the drawing board, and right now, we don't have any injuries, but this is a good rest time for us to get ready to go on this little game streak.
Well, let's look back at Saturday's game against Green Bay. Kind of got behind the 8 ball early. They scored on the first drive. You had a turnover on your first possession, a touchdown called back by a penalty on the second. Ended up having to try a long field goal, and they jumped out to an early lead, 20-0, and then you got going, but down 35-9 late in the first half. I thought kind of the big play was Josiah King with a long kick return into plus territory. That seemed to get you going. How important was that to get that long return, get some momentum, get that touchdown going into halftime, and set the stage for you guys to be able to make some plays in the second half and get back in the game?
In the IFL, you never want to get off to a slow start. With the turnover and with the touchdown that was called back, they put us they gave them 2 stops early. But when King ran the ball back for us, it gave us a little more momentum. At the end of the day, the guy still was in the game because it is an indoor football game. So when he ran it back on the other side, we scored and was able to get that score, then get a stop, and then get the ball back at the half. That kind of gave us a little energy to get going in the second half.
And one thing I've noticed in 2 years that we've been in the Indoor Football League is that double score is something that a lot of coaches go for. You try to get that last possession in the first half, and you got the score. You were able to get a stop, as you mentioned, on Green Bay's last possession, and then take the opening kickoff of the second half, go down and score. Because of the nature of the game where things can swing pretty wildly and you can see runs of 14, 16, 20 points in a row, how important is it to be able to get that last possession, that last score of the first half, and then take the second half kickoff and have the opportunity to go down and score again. And essentially, if you can play the timing right, get a chance to score 14 points without the opponent ever touching the football.
It's important. That's when you played a lot of games at the end of that first half. I've been a part of games where you kick it off, but I've been a part of games where you kick like 5 onside kicks in that 1 minute. So, yeah, it's a crazy game, but that first half is super important because now if you can score and then get the ball back at the half and score again, you can either come back, you can either break down a big score, or you can take the lead by 14. It works both ways.
And I think the other big thing is, Jim Leisure likes to say it starts with stops on the defensive end. And that often means turnovers. Against Quad City, you were +2, and that allowed you to take command of that game, especially in the second half. Last week, you were -3. The last one was a Hail Mary at the end of the game, trying to make a play down 9. But, how important is that ball security and taking care of the football to give yourself chances to finish possessions with points?
You got to take care of the football. At the end of the day, turnovers is not good no time, and especially in the indoor game. When you don't have a lot of possessions to work with. And we cut ourselves down, with two turnovers early. And, they kind of put us behind the radar. Of course, Green Bay is a great team, so they took advantage of it, and at the end of the day, when we come out, we got to make sure that we take care of the ball early and often.
We mentioned Green Bay being a great team, Quad City a great team in week 1. You're facing 2 very, very good teams early. You could say the same for Arizona here coming up in a week and a half. But the fact that you've had a chance to face some of the top teams in the league, and I know you really have designs on being in that mix as well, how good was it to be able to see yourself against the teams that you're hoping to be competing against for a conference championship come July and August, and see where you are here early?
It was great. I think the IFL did a great job giving us the schedule that they did. The first 3 games are against playoff teams. Coming in against Quad City, they got a great quarterback in DeQuan Neal, so that was a challenge in itself. Also now playing against Green Bay with a great defense. Now we know where we stand when it comes to great teams. So now we can either match them or we can get better than them. Now we know exactly what we need to do to get ready for that run in the middle. Because, at the end of the day, right now, we're trying to build for the end. You can't win the championship in week 2, but you can prepare for it to build and get that run going mid-season to take you to the end of the season.
One thing, give you a chance to brag on your staff and your players a little bit. In week 1 against Quad City, 21-7 after halftime, and ended up taking command of that game that was very much in the air at the half. And essentially, after the first drive of the second half, they did not score. Your defense strung together stops. And then against Green Bay, outscored them 26-16 after halftime as well. Just describe the adjustments that you guys are making, seeing what teams are doing in the first half and what you're doing, and being able to then execute those adjustments after halftime to either, in the case of week 1, put the game away, or in the case of last week, get yourself back into the game to give your team a chance to win after falling behind by 26 points early.
So it's a great thing. I have a great staff. One thing about it is you see me on the field all the time, but at the end of the day, my staff is doing most of the work on the field, on the sideline, making adjustments, things like that. So when we go into halftime, they have all their notes down. They understand how people are trying to attack us, how we need to attack others. So we get together as coaches, we go over it, and then they relay the message to the players. So my staff does a great job making sure we understand what we're doing in the second half, and my players also, taking that message from my assistant coaches and come out and make the adjustments. And now that's why we won both second halves of each game.
Well, and you've got a veteran team as well, and it's an opportunity where you've got players that have a lot of experience to step up at winning time, essentially, and describe the fact that you've got a number of players that have played a lot of football, especially in the indoor game. And I know it's taken some time to put this team together from nothing as an expansion team a year ago, and you felt like you went through 3 seasons essentially to build a team that in year 2 can be a contender. But adding pieces like CJ Wyndham to that, adding pieces like CJ Parrish on the defensive end, Trey Smalls on defense to the core that you already had with Felix Harper and Isaiah Coulter and Josiah King and Jalen Swan and Jaden Rowe and a number of other guys, JT Stokes. There's so many, it's difficult to mention, but having that veteran core of guys that know the game, know your system, and have been able to really hit the ground running and produce as not just a team that is playing really well, but a team that has a chance to compete for a championship this year.
Having those bets, they give the rookies a good understanding of it's never over until it's over. Just like in Green Bay when we was down 28-6, them guys never flinched. They understood what we had to do to come back. They understand what we had, the process of, elimination one play at a time and score and get some stops. So having those big guys, they make sure they understand that they understand how this game goes. Having the big guys as well is, we still a young team, compared to the games we played with each other. So they understand practice. They understand how we need to study. They need to know the effort that we need to put in. So, when we lose a game like this, they go to the drawing board and they understand to go back and hard work and understand that we need to be better. So that's the great thing about having bets on your team.
Felix Harper's had a really good start to the year. He was 15 to 23 last week. Had a really good game in week one, completing 69% of his passes, 5 touchdowns. He's a guy you added late in the season last year. And I know talking to you and your staff, the thought was, we've got our quarterback. What has been the benefit to him of having a full training camp with the offense, with the receiving core, being able to hit the ground running this year to have the success he's had so far?
The confidence, when you come in knowing that you're the man, you understand the expectations that you have and the organization have for you. He stood up, he understood that part, but also his leadership. When we outside of football meetings, he have meetings with the offense by itself. He have meetings with the team by itself. To make sure everybody understand exactly what they need to do when it comes to winning. So having Felix on board is great because of the fact that he played a lot of snaps in college. He was able to get an opportunity on the NFL level. Now he's in the IFL and he understands how to be poised, how to be patient. And also, he pushed himself probably harder than anybody can. So, having Felix just give us that understanding of we do have our quarterback.
Well, and you've got a lot of weapons for him to throw to. You've got a guy like Isaiah Coulter who picked up midseason last year, who's got some National Football League experience. CJ Wyndham's won a championship last year, and he's been really, really good the last couple of weeks. JT Stokes, another former All-IFL guy, and even Josiah King in the passing game. And it felt like every single one of those guys was making a big play last week. CJ had a 17-yard catch to set up a touchdown before halftime. There was a 15-yarder to Coulter that set the one up right after halftime. JT Stokes had a long touchdown catch as well. Josiah King had a couple of big catches that set up a score. How good is it to have the number of weapons that you have on the outside and in the running game as well, but on the outside for Felix to be able to throw to and have guys open downfield?
It's huge. At the end of the day, you want to make sure your quarterback has some great receivers. Those guys, they're fast, they're strong, they run great routes, so they always make themselves open for Felix, at the end of the day. Plus, also, they know the game. They understand how to, work against zone. They know how to work against man, but also they're professionals. They come to work every day. They understand that I can hold them accountable, even though they got, a lot of games played in this league. But, at the end of the day, when you have 3 big-time receivers, man, that's great for a quarterback to have.
Yeah, it felt like one of the turning points in your favor on Saturday was that touchdown right before halftime and then the stop. And then later in the game, you just cut the lead to 42-36, touchdown pass to Isaiah Coulter. You spring an onside kick, and Callum Sutherland perfectly executes it. You recover. Unfortunately, you weren't able to finish that drive. Had you been able to score on that possession and take the lead and come all the way back from that early deficit, what would that have done to the outcome of that game?
It would have been huge, man. At the end of the day, being down 28-6, to come down to one possession and take the lead is huge. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get that touchdown. So now, we have to go back to the drawing board and got to understand that at those moments, we got to make sure we understand how big that moment is, and we got to make plays to get us down there and score. But at the end of the day, it happened in the second game of the season instead of the 15th game of the season. So it's something we can learn from. But at the end of the day, if we can get that drive back, we would, because at the end of the day, we can't turn the ball over on first down. But one thing about it is, I know for a fact that our quarterback is going to learn from it, and it's going to make him better from it.
Well, on the defensive side, week one, your defense was lights out in the second half. And last week, you got a couple of stops to give yourself a chance to get back into the game. Marcus Gray has moved into that linebacker role, and I know he played a little bit for you at defensive back last season, had 12 tackles in week one against Quad City, had 5 last week. What do you like about his game? He's a veteran, an Indiana native, Indiana State grad, but he's a veteran, played a lot of years in different leagues. And what does he bring to this team in the middle of that defense, essentially quarterbacking your D?
He understands the game, but he's a hard worker. He's dedicated to make sure everybody around him is better. Again, he's still working, work in progress, but he's moving in the right direction. He make a lot of plays. He blitz a lot for us. He make a lot of plays in the run game. He make even plays in the pass game. But having Marcus, he understands how we want it. He understands the exact things that he needs to do to make his team successful, on the defensive end. So it's a pleasure having Marcus at linebacker.
And then up front, you've got such a good defensive line with a lot of depth, but Jalen Swan just keeps making plays. Had a sack, a couple tackles for loss last week at defensive end. He was an all-IFL performer last year. As the leader of that defensive line that's really deep, really good, you've got a lot of talent up there. What does he bring as far as just being a difficult guy to block and deal with?
He brings understanding of the game too. He's been around the IFL for a few years now, so he understands what he needs to do to be successful. But the expectation for Swan is super high because last year he was the sack leader. So every team going to play him like he's the best in the business that he is. So when it comes to him, having him on your team, now it opens up other people because a lot of people like putting eyes on him. So having Swan on one side now is able to open up smalls, is able to open up long, and things like that. So we love having him because now it opened up lanes for people like Marcus to blitz him.
Yeah, Jaden Rowe on defense had 2 picks in week one. CJ Parrish had the hit that led to one of those interceptions as well. Just describe your DB group and the job that they've done. I thought in week one against Quad City, they did a great job of coverage downfield and not giving Daquan Neal much to see and much to throw at, especially once you got a lead and they had to throw the football.
Yeah, they're coming along well. At the end of the day, it's all first time working together. Mm-hmm. So with a DB group, first time 2 games, you got to gel. So they've been gelling really good. The first game, we started off slow, but the second half they kicked it in. And against Green Bay, if you really look at it, the quarterback went 9 for 21. We just gave up a few big plays early, to make it to give up 3 touchdowns. That was tough. But at the end of the day, those guys are coming to play. And they're going to get better and better as the year goes on. So I'm excited for, Jalen Rowe. He's our leader back there, and our other guys back there are going to be solid as well, too.
Well, looking ahead after the bye week, you've got the Arizona Rattlers coming in. You're actually going to see them twice this year, even though they're in the Western Conference. But it's a team that we haven't seen here facing the Fishers Freight yet. We also haven't seen them this season. They haven't played a game yet. Their opener will be this weekend. But it's a spotlight game for the league. It's a Sunday night game. It's going to get a national audience. And again, facing a team that hasn't played a game yet, but I know they were a playoff team last year, and they've added the league MVP and Max Myler. Just a quick thought about that matchup against Arizona coming up on Easter Sunday.
It's going to be fun. Anytime you play an Arizona Rattler team, they're going to bring fans with them. Coach Kevin Guy is a great coach, man. He's won plenty of championships. So he's going to bring his guys in. They're going to be physical. They're going to be fast. They're going to be disciplined. So it's going to be fun for the fans to watch. Now they see two teams that, got expectations in the league playing against each other, and young. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of things that they learning. It's going to be a lot of things that we have to learn. But overall, it's going to be a great game for the league. The only game that night on Easter, I think everybody's going to be tuned in, and we have a sellout crowd, man. That's going to be great for the league. Again, playing against the Rattlers, it's going to be fun, but also it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and then you've got 7 straight games before your next bye week, but you're going to see a lot of different teams. But how good is it to come back from the bye week? You've got that home game on April 5th, 7:30 kickoff, and then April 11th, the Iowa Barnstormers will be here as well for a 7 o'clock kickoff. How good is it to have 2 home games coming off of the bye week to hopefully hit the ground running before hitting the road for a couple in the latter part of April?
It's fun because, again, when you play home games, you in your environment, you get to, be in front of your fans, things like that. But also playing back-to-back games, you start getting in the rhythm of, practicing every day. You get in the rhythm of, going through the schedule. It's important because now it's time to make a run to make sure that we put ourselves in a situation to be, in the run for the end of the season. Again, right now everybody is working on what they got to work on. Everybody's working on their craft, but we want to make sure we win a few of these games to make sure that when the end comes, we're there to make that run.
Just describe the atmosphere in the Fishers Event Center, the crowds that have come and supported this team from day one, what that means to you and your players to have the support that you have had, and had a great crowd for the opener a couple of weeks ago, and are certainly looking forward to a number of other great crowds. Freight fans, if you're watching, Ticketmaster.com, or head on over to FishersFreightFootball.com and get your tickets and your season tickets for the remainder of the year. But describe that ninth man that crowd is for you when you are at home, and how big of a deal that is.
It's electric. When you walk in, and as a player and a coach, when you walk in and you have 66,000 plus fans going crazy, to cheer you on to win a game, you get excited, man. It's a whole different understanding of, hey, we're not playing just for us. We're playing for Fishers. And Fishers came to support us, so we definitely got to win for Fishers. So at the end of the day, when they're in there waving their towels, when they're in there screaming, when they're in there, cheering us on, the DJ is playing great music. We feel like that atmosphere is one of the best in the league. So when we step in the building, we are playing on all cylinders for 4 quarters. So, the fans keep doing your thing, keep coming out, keep supporting us, and we're going to make sure we put on a show for you guys.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll talk to you again next week as we get ready to face the Arizona Rattlers on April 5th.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Dixie Wooten on Fishers Freight Coach's Corner. The next game and the next home game for the Freight will be on Sunday, April 5th, a 7:30 kickoff against the Arizona Rattlers. You can also watch that game on Yahoo Sports. And then back home on Saturday, April 11th, to take on the Iowa Barnstormers. Looking forward to that. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back with you next week on IFL Network for another edition of the Fishers Freight Coach's Corner with Dixie Wooten. I am Andrew Smith. Thanks for watching.